everybody can make their own decision of what was presented and what was put forward. All right. Let me just open up the brothers' mics. Brother Issa, mic is open. Brother Anpu, your mic is also open. And I have a series of questions so that we're in order. Or not, so that we don't have any form of, it's not disorganized, for the benefit of the people who are calling in and listening. And people are saying, why does Buffy sound like this tonight? Somebody just messaged me. I'm being humble, man. I'm trying to be fair-minded. I'm not trying to take a side. But yes, I put out a lot of information within the last 2 weeks about Dr. York. That's very troubling. And let's just get it on. All right, so brother Issa, introduce yourself to the people out there, my brother.
Brother Issa Mahdi, from the Ansar community, still a Nuwapian in spirit, and still a supporter of Dr. Malachi Z. York.
All right, peace. Thank you, my brother, for joining us. And brother Anpu, go ahead and introduce yourself, my brother.
Peace. Well, I'm a former member of the Nuwapian organization, and you know, as a Nuwapian, I was known by the brother Anpu Seti Unk, and then you know my name changed to Anpu Satuk Unk Atumbre. I also, you know, dealt with Dr. York's case. I lived on the land. I lived with Dr. York from 1997 till 2004, when we got evicted off the land because of the federal forfeiture. And I continued to help. You know, I was involved with Dr. York's legal defense, directly involved with it. I was Dr. York's minister of record, pastor of record, visiting him in prison, in all the prisons that he's been in, with the exception of Florence ADX. So I visited him from, you know, he was incarcerated in different prisons, so I used to go to the different prisons that he was, wherever he was, I would go there. So, you know, I was involved with the case directly, intimately, dealt with the witnesses, every single witness for the defense, and as far as the people or the witnesses that were called for the prosecution, most of them outside of the government's witnesses, the government agents, and those kind of people, professionals, as far as the Nuwapians or the ex-Nuwapians that were called to the stand for the prosecution. You know, I'm familiar with them. I know them. They all live on the land. I lived on the land with them, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I'm very familiar with them. So, you know, just to kind of give a background, that's my involvement, direct involvement. I was involved with every single thing dealing with the case. I've been to every single court hearing, every single, even the planning and zoning, which is prior to the legal, federal and state legal issues. All those court hearings, all of the attorneys' meetings, all of the legal meetings. Like I said, all the visitations that I did, dealt with all the witnesses, all of the videotapes, all of the videos that you see on YouTube of the defense witnesses were done by me. So, though, you know, a lot of the paperwork that people have access to or have had access to came by way of my efforts. And I say all this to say, not to be arrogant or any form of fashion egotistical. I'm just giving a history to put myself in context to your listeners of where I am or what my involvement was with the case. And as far as the legal documents, one of my jobs was to inform the Nuwapian community of the legal situation, of all the legal issues. So it was by default that I'm the one that was responsible for giving away the court documents and so on and so forth. So all of the public court documents, you know, I obtained them and I made them available to the public, but more especially to inform the Nuwapian community so that they can be abreast on what was going on with the case in real time. So again, I don't say that out of ego or arrogance whatsoever. It's just, you know, that was part of one of the things that I function as in the community when I was a member. And I also used to give classes, quote-unquote classes, but have legal meetings where I would educate the Nuwaubian community about the case, so that more people who wanted to help out, they can help out from a more informed position than to just make suggestions on the side without knowing really what's going on. So I used to hold meetings at the very least once a week, but it's more often than that. One or more times a week where people would come and we would discuss the case, and I would share information and answer their questions and so on and so forth. And that proved to be fruitful as far as people helping out, because once people got to know more about the case, then they were able to jump on and help out, not just donate money and just, keep on moving. They would actually be able to help out and strategize and actually participate and come up with different, help out with different solutions and things like that. So,
all right. Let me do this, brother. I'm gonna ask some questions. I have 10 questions, pretty much 10 questions. I got a lot more, but I'm gonna ask questions and have you guys both answer them, so we could have it organized.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask Brother Issa to ask you a question, and then have you ask him a question, and then what else going to do it instead of we doing like a back and forth. There's going to be back and forth, of course, and people are going to want to interrupt because of the passion of the situation. So I'm trying to keep my level down so that you guys would follow me and keep my level down, because I get turned up in a 0 to 100 real quick. That's golfy right there. All right, but in respect of the people who are followers are still honor this man, I want to give them the opportunity to hear this and then do their own research. Brother Anpu is somebody who has some manuscripts, I assume, and Brother Issa, I'm sure he has probably saw something in the past or what's going on with the case. So I don't know how his knowledge and what his background is as far as the information, getting the actual information and seeing it. I don't know what his history on that is, but we will find out. So I'm going to start the show basically with this question. The first question of the evening. Let me bring it up here on my computer. All right, the first question is all right, I'm going to ask both of you guys, it's a simple question. How long were you guys a part of the whole Nuwaubian culture or a part of it? So let me ask that to Brother Anpu first, and then Brother Issa, he can respond after. Go ahead, Brother Anpu.
For me, from 1992 till 2009.
All right, because I know you said you from 1997, that's when Tamaray was available for you to live on, or how did that work out?
Yeah. Well, I've been part of
between 92 and 97, you were a part of the Atlanta committee, or you were in another state?
No. I was in Washington D.C.
Okay.
So I actually came through the D.C. We used to call them tabernacles or tabs. So I came through. It was a bookstore. So I came through the D.C. By way of D.C. So yeah, 1992 would be my official start, and then 97 is when I moved on to. At the time, we called it Kadesh, which is the land of 404 Shadydale Road, which a lot of people know as Tamaray, or a lot of Nuwaubians will know as formerly known as Tamaray.
All right, beautiful. All right, Brother Issa, can you tell us how long you've been a part of the whole Nuwaubian culture as far as being a part of the organization and so forth?
Well, when my mother was in the community as an answer. So I was basically brought in as a baby back in the 1970s. The Nuwaubian movement started, or the Nuwaubian name really, that started in about 94, 95 when the move was made down to Georgia. I wasn't on the land. I didn't live on the land. I got locked up at the time, so I didn't go down there.
Okay.
But prior to that,
right.
That's my history of it. Period of time I wasn't in the movement because my mother had left. But as a teenager, I was still involved.
Okay. All right, so we're talking about 20 years, 30 years, right? As far as being a part of some way, somehow a part of New Apia, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let me ask this. This might not apply to Brother Issa, but were you very close? Were any of you guys very close to Dr. York? So I asked that to Issa first.
Yeah. Hold on. One moment. Hold on.
Mm-hmm. Let me let Anpu answer in the meantime. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. I mean, I became what I would consider a close.
Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hold on, Issa. Hold on a second. Go ahead, Anpu.
Yeah, I was just saying that. I became good friends with Dr. York, and pretty much by default, I lived on the land, just as everyone else did, and I had a chance to work with him and be around him as far as physically in the same location, and had like I said, had the opportunity to work with him, and then at the time of his arrest, from the time of his arrest, I was intimately involved with his case. So I was visiting him, and my visitations as a pastor or minister, they were one-on-one visitations for 6 hours, and I used to visit him several times a month. At one point, it was twice a week. So you can imagine having 6-hour conversations with someone. Just that alone will let you know that you get to be very pretty close or become good friends and things like that.
Right. All right. Brother Issa, go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, my contact with him would be, I have to say it differently, because if you was coming up as a baby in that community, basically your connection with him wasn't it wouldn't be that same type of situation until I was like a teenager. As far as being in contact, when I was away, he did stay in contact with him. But as far as on every day, them brothers was down there in Georgia with him. I wasn't down there. I could only go by what I know from being in New York and how things were in New York.
Okay. All right. So let's kick this off a little bit. Turn it up a little bit, as the youngsters would say. All right. Regarding Dr. York's case, what can you tell us about it? Let me start with Brother Anpu this time. Regarding Dr. York's federal and state case regarding child molestation and the RICO Act, the Mann Act, all this different stuff. What can you tell us about the case? And let's try to keep it. I'm going to give you guys, use your discretion. But when it's time to cut you guys off, I'll make a comment. But go ahead. What can you tell us about the case, my brother?
You should probably let Issa go first. I don't say that because I can get real long-winded. I mean, I could talk for days about the case.
All right.
The case
is. Let me. You know what? Then let's do it this way. Then let me ask Brother Issa this. As far as the whole case for Dr. York, what's been going on, as far as what we've heard in the media, what the misinformation or the proper information, what can you tell us about it? That about the whole case, and take a minute and a half or 2 minutes. Go ahead, my brother. Take your time.
All right, let's outline the case for a minute. He's not serving 135 years in prison for child molestation. There's no federal child molestation statute. He's serving time for violations of the RICO Act, violations of the Mann Act, violations of money structuring, and I believe in taxes as well. When the case first started, when he charged...
Hold on one second, Issa. Hold on one second. Are you saying for the federal case there's nothing to do with any children or anything?
No. What I'm saying is they don't have a quote-unquote child molestation law in the federal statutes.
I agree with you. But you're saying that none of the federal case has nothing to do with children. That's your bottom line.
No, I didn't say that. I said there's no child molestation case. They did try a case that's a child molestation case, but there is no statute for it. They used the Mann Act. Right. They utilized the Mann Act to do that.
All right, because that's kind of when you said that, that's making everybody who's listening feel like You know, there's nothing to do with children to do with the case. So you got to be specific, because remember, this is, let me tell you something. There's so much people listening to the show right now. After this advertising for like an hour and a half, it's unbelievable. There's so much people in the queue, and I'm sure there's a lot of people on Facebook listening just by this response. So you have to be clear, my brother. I want the people to know what is really going on. So when you say that there's no child molestation, that just throws the children part totally out of it. You understand what I'm saying? Because that's kind of in a sense. You understand what I'm saying? All right, cool. All right, so go ahead, my brother. Explain. Go ahead. Tell us about the case.
All right. So when they tried him, in the state had the case first, Sheriff Howard Seals. He was after Dr. York, and brother was on the line. He vouched for it because he stated it before. When they went down there to Georgia, they were looking to stop them from growing on the land down there in 44 Shady Dale Road, which is called the land. Once someone had filed for the zoning, they had to do for zoning to build on the land. They were always being blocked and denied. One of the issues that they had leeway in, I'm talking about Sheriff Seals, when he was able to have some leeway, is when they built the Ramses Club. The person who had submitted the paperwork he didn't file the paperwork properly, so that gave Sheriff Seals the go-between. It gave him the green light to go in on something which he had an absolute case for. And after that, they try to stymie the Nubian community from growing down there. This is a period of time that's going from about, I'd say, 97 all the way almost to the time of his arrest. And so when we're looking at this case, it's not, we can't look at it in a vacuum. We have to look at it for, the travel of the case. There was land bought down there in Georgia, in Eatonton, Georgia. About over 200 people moved down there, and they built the land for our own people, who happen to be Nubians. Regardless of the religious aspect, we're looking at a racial aspect of black empowerment. Once the local people in government, such as like Sheriff Seals and people who have to do with vested interests, they saw what was going on, they had a problem with it. This case didn't materialize until May 8th, 2002. That's when they raided the land. They arrested Dr. York. He wasn't on the land, by the way. And they charged him in the state, and they also charged him in the federal jurisdiction as well. He was charged in the state court. They did charge him with child molestation. That is a fact. In the federal court, they did not charge him with that. But the state court, when they talk about this big plea agreement, right? Which I would say, and a lot of people say, it was done under false pretenses due to ineffective assistance of counsel. That did not have a bearing on that federal charge. Federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction is two different jurisdictions. That wasn't explained to Dr. York, and that's where you get these so-called plea agreements. And the judge had rejected one in a federal court. It was rejected, and he ended up going to trial. Now, one of the things a lot of people say, well, if you're innocent, why would you plead out to something you didn't do? That's looking at things from, looking at on paper, believing in the system. But, there's different aspects when you go down south and look at what the system, what they say, the practice of the system, contrary to the theory of the system. Now, when we take it as far as the federal case, which ended up going to trial, there was a superseding indictment not too long before the day of trial. And this is when attorney Adrian Patrick came on board and decided to help him and represent Dr. York. Now, if we want to look at it, the superseding act that included the RICO Act, that included the money structuring, and also the tax. And these are the charges that really held him in a situation where he was gonna end up doing some time, because it's close to impossible to win on a RICO Act at trial. It's close to impossible. You don't see many, and the RICO Act was designed for people who are running would it be organized crime organizations such as like the mafia or maybe a gang. That wasn't the case with Dr. York, and they were able to put indict him on the RICO Act. So when we're talking about this case, there was two aspects to it: a federal aspect and a state aspect.
Let me ask you this real quickly before I let Brother Anpu come in. For the state case, when he pled guilty, what did he plead guilty to?
On the state case, he did. Yes, sir. He pled. It was a plea, which was of child molestation. That is a fact.
Okay. Was there any other charges along with the state case other than the child molestation?
Not to my knowledge, right now. Not that I recall.
All right, cool.
I can look it up right now on my computer. All right.
No problem. I respect your honesty, my brother. All right. Let me move on to Brother Anpu now, and you could respond to what the brother said. A couple of points before Anpu speaks. The brother said that the molestation, there's no molestation charges because it's not in the federal statutes. They can't do that under the federal law, something to that effect. And he didn't really explain if child molestation or any children issues. What was it that he got convicted for? So I hope when you respond, Brother Anpu, you could put some light on that for the people that are listening. All right? Go ahead, my brother.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, to try to go back to what was said at first, I'll start out with the zoning issues. And the brother is correct about there being zoning issues. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the zoning issues came about because of negligence. A lot of it came about because of negligence on the Nuwaubian part. And I'll give you an example. What was mentioned was the Ramses nightclub or social club. We used to call it a fellowship hall. And what happened is, and I'm gonna use the word we, just for the sake of the conversation. We would file or request a building permit for a building, and on the permit we had on there storage building. And with a storage building, you only allowed a certain amount of utilities. So for a storage facility, you would have bare minimum electricity, no plumbing, and things like that. No occupancy, no plumbing, and just barely electricity to light up to have some storage lights. So this is what we would put a permit in for. And I'm just using an example of Ramses Social Club. So that's what was put in on the application, and that's what was granted. But what we end up doing was taking a 50 by 100 foot silo, and a silo is a building that you can erect. You know, it's made of metal. In case people don't know, we would take a silo, erect a silo, put in for storage, get it permitted as a storage. But then we went ahead and built it and made it into a full-fledged social club. With all the bells and whistles, from plumbing to lighting to occupancy to the whole kitchen, the whole thing. So I only say this because this is a lot of things that people miss out when they tell the story, because you have to put things in context. So it's not like people were picking on us when we were there. We are also part of the problem. We were also part of the problem, and this is something that the Nuwaubians are going to have to accept. As far as the responsible, the responsible parts on Nuwaubians' parts. So that did lead up to several different zoning conflicts with the county, with the Edenton or Putnam County zoning and zoning issues, the planning and zoning, the building and zoning. So I just gave one example, but there's a whole bunch of examples with the different various buildings on the land, and even the residents, because the whole idea was to actually house more people on the land. And the land was 476 acres, and that's a huge amount of land. We had 3 lakes and 476 acres. Only 19 of the acres were actually clear enough to develop on. That's what you could see from the Highway 142 that you could drive by, which was 19 acres. So you're dealing with over 400 some acres that was, you couldn't see because it's trees and everything like that. So a part of 19 acres, we had houses, double wide trailers, and the plan was to put more double wide trailers to have more people, give more people the ability to move up there. But the land being so big was zoned funny. It was zoned as agriculture and some as residential. So this is where the whole zoning issue came into play, where we tried to get it rezoned. And this is where the denials came into play. It wasn't so much the buildings themselves, it was the zoning. We were trying to rezone to get commercial, a C2, because one of the plans that Dr. York had was to make it into a quote-unquote amusement park, a type of an Egyptian amusement park. And the county officials, they denied it because, they have certain requirements that we weren't meeting and that we were supposed to meet up to, and then, progressively be able to get, the permits for, and so on and so forth. One was, the highway. They had to worry about traffic, the highway, widening the highway. We would have to put roads on the property, different things. So I don't want to get too long-winded with that, but I just wanted to use that as an example with the zoning issues. That we did have a lot of zoning conflicts, and the sheriff Seals was involved with that as one of the code enforcers. He actually did something in order to actually become a code enforcer, to actually be the one. No, actually, he used to escort the code enforcer out to the land, because the code enforcer would come out and inspect the buildings and make sure they were up to code and so on and so forth. But he would come out and escort and be there as well. But he did also gain a title, an official title. I forgot what that exact title was, but it had to do with the zoning. So I don't want to go long with that.
Let's move on to the case, brother. All right, let's talk about the state and the federal case.
Okay. So I'm going in order as the brother was saying it. But as far as molestation, there aren't any federal molestation statutes. So Dr. York was not charged with child molestation in his federal case. He was charged with various counts that involved the RICO Act and the Mann Act. And as the brother said, the RICO Act was first enacted in the 70s, dealing with organized crime or mafia. It was basically to arm the prosecution to be able to go after organized crime. The Mann Act is really dealing with prostitution, traveling across state lines for the purposes of illegal sexual activity. And that came about in the early 1900s with the boxer Jack Johnson, dealing with prostitution and making money and so on and so forth. So those are the two main acts that Dr. York was charged with. He was charged with 13 counts, split between either RICO Acts or Mann Act. That was what he actually went to trial for. So yes, it wasn't for child molestation. The child molestation case was actually the Georgia state case, and he was charged with 204 counts of child molestation and aggravated child molestation, as well as, I believe, some of the counts involved rape. So that added up to 204 counts, and that doesn't mean 204 children. It just means 204 counts that involved a small number of. So that's with that. And then maybe you can refresh my memory on some of the other points that was made, Brother Godfrey.
One of the things I want to make clear for the federal case. So the Mann Act, as far as it has to do with prostitution and with carrying kids across state lines, what was in that part of the case that was related to Dr. York? What were the charges, and with as far as that was concerned?
Okay, well, the Mann Act, as I said, it involves interstate travel and transportation. And there's a slight difference between the two. One is that you cause someone to travel, and the other is that you travel. You actually travel with them, or you cause them to travel. And this is the Mann Act deals with pimps and prostitutes, because pimps used to send women to perform services for money across state lines. So they didn't have to actually transport the person there. They could just cause them to be transported there as well. So that's the slight variation between the two. And what it is with Dr. York is from the move from New York, because the organization started in New York, and from New York down to Georgia, there was counts involved with that transportation and transport, and then there was also counts that dealt with from Georgia to Florida. And it's not that we had property in Florida; it involved trips to Disney World. So where he was actually accused of illegal sexual activity in Florida. So by the fact that you cross state lines between Georgia and Florida, that's where the federal jurisdiction was assumed. So that that's a brief answer to what you were asking.
All right, let's get down to some serious questions now. And how many victims were involved in the case? I'm going to ask brother Issa first. How many victims were involved in the case that you're aware of?
Alleged victims, 13.
Yes, sir. 13?
Yeah.
Okay. Brother Anpu?
Yeah. But real quick, if you don't mind, I want to go back to the plea agreement, because the brother mentioned the plea that Dr. York took, and I believe you asked him a little bit about that. The plea, Dr. York pleaded in both the federal and the state venue, and the plea, the reason why he was indicted again in November of 2003 was because he was originally charged with only 4 counts in the federal case. Okay, it was only 4 counts, and he had a co-defendant, his what they called his main wife, but another sister, Kathy Johnson, was also charged with him in the federal case. Mm-hmm. The others, I don't know if your listeners know, but there's a few people that's involved with the case. It was Dr. York, Kathy Johnson, and then there was 3 other sisters that were involved. They only had a state case. It was only Dr. York and Kathy Johnson that had a federal charges. So Dr. York originally only had 4 counts. So when the talks came about for a plea, the prosecution stopped their investigation, and they basically stopped what they were doing. So when the plea was rejected by the judge and Dr. York, and then subsequently, it basically set the stage for trial. Then the prosecution started their investigation and whatever it is that they were doing. So they ended up coming with a superseding indictment in November of 2003. So in January of 2003 is when Dr. York pleaded guilty. And when you plead guilty, the prosecution obviously is going to stop whatever it is that they're investigating, because they feel that they're going to have a plea that goes through. But the plea was rejected by the judge, and the reason why it was rejected was because the agreement was for 15 years, and the judge in all federal cases, whenever there's a federal plea, the plea has to be approved by the judge, and the judge uses the sentencing guidelines from the pre-sentencing report that's performed on the defendant. So the judge had to wait for the investigation to take place, get the report, go by the report, and then compare it to the sentencing guidelines and so on and so forth, and then the judge has discretion to reject or accept the plea. This is for all federal pleas. Now, state pleas are different. State pleas are between the prosecution and the defense, and basically the judge doesn't have to go through that process, and the judge will make sure the defendant is competent and make sure that he enters the plea with his own sound mind and so on and so forth, and it's usually accepted. So there's a difference in the plea process. But in Dr. York's federal case, it was rejected by the judge because he felt that the sentencing was too low, the 15 years, and he said that the minimum would have to be 20. So he wanted to add on 5 more years, and because that 5 more years was not added on, he rejected the plea, or he rejected the plea and would only accept a plea if it was 5 more years. and that wasn't done. So therefore, that's why the case went to trial. So I just want to get that kind of
question before. I have a quick question for you. I have a quick question to add on to that real quickly for the people that's listening. Now, if he had taken, so the judge said the judge was willing to sign off on 20 years for the federal case. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
All right. So if he had taken that plea for 20 years of the federal case, the plea for the state case was for how many years?
The plea for the state was 12. And
so the plea so would it be concurrent? How would it work if he had taken the deal? Would he be out in 32 years, or would he be out in 20 years, and would they count it concurrently? How would that have worked?
It was concurrent, which means that he would have had to serve 20 years, and it would cover both. It wasn't consecutive where it would be 20 and then 12. It was 12. It was to be concurrent. And if he had gotten to 20 years, he'd have been out in 8 years from now. You should have took that deal.
But anyway, well, let's move on. Let me ask you this, my brother. Before you're gonna go more into the federal for me, but in the state case, can you explain to us what did he actually plead guilty to? Let the audience know what he pled guilty to. What were the charges he pled guilty to?
Okay. Well, like I said, it's a lot. So it was 204 counts in the state case, but in the plea agreement for the state, the prosecution was willing to reduce it to 77 counts. So this is how they came up with the 12 years as opposed to more than 12 years. They were willing to take away some of the counts, which reduced it from 204 to 77, and Dr. York was to plead guilty to those 77 as opposed to the 204, which reduced the sentencing time to 12 years. So if people want to know exactly what those are, that's where you see the video that became popular on YouTube where Dr. York is in court pleading guilty. There's two videos. There's one where it's two parts. One video is where the prosecution or the judge is reading all of the counts, all 77 counts. And then the other part is where the judge is asking Dr. York the necessary questions, competency questions, and Dr. York eventually signs the agreement on camera and everything. So I'm saying that to say, instead of me sitting here, running the list down, people could watch the video to see exactly what they were, because they read them out loud. And it's
I know that, but brother, no. For the record, can you read out, at least tell us what 5 of the charges were? You have to do that. I'm not sending nobody to YouTube, brother. At least give us 5 of the charges that were. At least give us the 5 main ones that he pled guilty to.
Okay, well, they were molestation charges, and without naming the people listed, but they were molestation charges. And for example, one of the charges was digitally penetrating the anus or digitally penetrating the vagina. This is how detailed the charges were, the counts were. This is why they added up to 204, because each, even though it may be one person or one young person, each act on that person constituted a count. So one count could be, now we're saying charges, but they're really counts. So the charge is the actual law that applies to it. So he's charged with only a few charges, but there are 204 counts to them. So one of the counts involve, digitally penetrating the vagina of so-and-so. And digitally penetrating could be finger or whatever. Then it could be sexual intercourse. It could be oral sex and things like that. So these different counts were detailed, and like I said, they were read. So just to give you an example, though, that would be an example of the charges. Anal penetration, whether digitally or sexually, vaginal penetration digitally or sexually, oral sex, and things like that.
All right. All right. Issa, did you want to respond to some of the things that he said, or you want me to move on to the next question? Because I gave him a lot of leeway. I want to give you the same amount of leeway that I gave to Brother Anpu.
Yeah, I want.
Do you want to respond to that, or you want to move on?
Yeah, I want to respond to the whole aspect about the plea. You could hear it from Dr. York himself regarding why he took the plea. And I'm just going to briefly say, but out his own words, you can find it on YouTube, Al Patmo's videos. But basically, Dr. York was never given effective assistance of counsel from the time that his first lawyer was on the case. It was Senator Leroy Johnson. Thereafter, he was given counsel that was ineffective and wasn't working in his best interest. One of the attorneys, Manny Aurora, was the other attorney, Jonathan Marks. There was a few of these lawyers. They weren't working in his best interest to try to get him out. And I have to put this in context before this so-called plea happened. Is that there was actual judicial finding in family court regarding child molestation, and the family court judge, I believe it was 5 of the alleged victims who were supposed to be molested, had found there was no child molestation and released. The children were supposed to be released to their parents. They were never released. This was a judicial finding regarding the situation of child molestation. That was sealed. The family court proceedings were sealed. He was charged in state court, and at one of the hearings, it was a FBI agent. I believe her name was Jelaine Ward, and it relates to whether or not he brought people, the Mann Act, really. Was anyone brought over? Did she have witnesses to say that he had directed anyone to come over for the purpose of sex? And she said no. The reason why I'm saying this because it has 2 parts to it. In the state family court proceeding, our judge made a finding that there was no child molestation. That finding, it was sealed. Those proceedings were sealed. That
hey, hold on, brother. This is important what you're saying. Let me ask you this. So the 5 people in family court that were allegedly
I need to respond to that
to Dr. York. I know. I'm going to let you respond. So those 5 people were in Dr. York's case. That's you're saying those are out of the 13 victims, 5 of those people were involved in Dr. York's case. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct.
All right. So let him finish. Let him finish on Brother Anpu. Go ahead, Issa.
Now, what I'm saying, that judicial finding regarding the child molestation in family court, that was sealed. Those proceedings were sealed. That finding is a finding of fact. When the judge makes a finding, it's a finding of fact. His attorneys at the time, who he had, should have been able to use that in state court to have charges dismissed. It wasn't done. And when the proceedings went on in state court, his attorney, Dr. York says it himself, his attorneys were not working in his best interest, and the basic thing they wanted him to do is take a plea. The circumstances of his incarceration, which a lot of people might not know, but when a person's incarcerated, they could put you through some harsh conditions to sway you to plead out, whether it be in solitary confinement, whether it be not getting visits, it's a host of things, whether it be not letting you get any sleep. This puts you in a position of duress. Dr. York has stated these are some of the factors that played into his decision.
Hold on a second. Let me say this. So you're basically saying because Dr. York said so that you believe so. Is that the case, or are you going just based on what Dr. York says?
No,
whatever he
what
says,
I'm saying,
you're saying, okay,
what
I
I'm
agree.
saying is this. No. Not just because Dr. York said so, but if you look at the totality of the case, if you review, like I said, from the family court proceeding and what the lawyers didn't do, which they should have done, right? And then when you add on what Dr. York is telling you about his own mouth, when you put the 2 together,
okay,
it seems
Let me
very
ask you a
credible.
very serious question. Let me ask you a serious question. If the family court stuff is sealed, how do you know what it says?
If the family court is sealed, the children were released.
Yeah. I know the children were released, but who were they released to?
The parents.
You're released to the parents.
Can I respond? Right. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget.
Yeah. Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead, Brother Anpu.
Yeah, just real quick. I just don't want to be forgetful on the points. Number one, the family court case that the brother's talking about, it was not about child molestation, and it was not a court finding that there was no child molestation. That's false. You asked a good question: is if it's sealed, how would he know? And he doesn't know. The case was the family court case was about returning the children that were taken from the land. It was 5 of them. It was the whole case was about whether or not the parents were suitable parents that these children can go back to. So the parents had to prove to the court that they were fit, and they had a fit household that the children could live in. So the parents had to make sure they had jobs and make sure they had places to stay, and so on and so forth.
Brother,
these people.
Brother Anpu,
yeah.
Stop 1 second. Stop.
Yeah.
I hope the audience is seeing what's going on here. The brother Isa said that the family court was for child molestation. I asked Brother Isa, and I'm not saying he's wrong or right or whatever, but I asked the brother, how does he know that the case was child molestation and they were found not guilty of it or whatever? And he said that he himself said that it was sealed. Now, if it was sealed, how would Brother Isa know that the case was even about child molestation unless he knew the family and the family told him directly? Now, Brother Anpu now comes on and says that the case was not about that. It was about the fitness of the parents, whether they can actually supervise the children or they could go back into their custody based on the allegations against Dr. York. So now, who is telling the truth? Who is right and who is wrong? How do we know if Brother Anpu is right? How do we know if Brother Isa is right? This is why I'm having the show, ladies and gentlemen, because we need to clear up what's truth and what's falsehood. Let me ask Brother Anpu this before Brother Isa comes in, because Brother Isa has his sources, you have your sources. How do we know that what you're saying is correct?
Because, as I said, I was intimately involved, and I attended every single hearing. The brother, one of the parents of the children that were taken is the brother Anthony Evans. I worked with him, dealt with him. He's also he was one of the listed landowners and dealt with the land issues, and that's another topic we could get into. I also helped one of the parents make sure that they had a suitable job to prove to the court that they had an income in order for them to take back custody of their child. Janice Mathis was the attorney for that. I worked with her. I dealt with her. So I was privy to what the brother is calling sealed paperwork. I was there. So all the sealed documents.
Let me stop you.
I acted as paralegal.
Let me stop you.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me stop you. Brother Isa, based on what Brother Anpu has said, would you agree that his information being directly involved is a little bit more credible than you just saying, hey, they went to family court and it's sealed and it was for molestation? In all fairness, because I want to, I don't want to be on this.
No, I understand where you're coming from. It would sound more credible. No, I'm
not talking. All right, let me ask you.
No, I said that for a specific reason, because you alluded to something, right? You said, well, obviously you got your sources, so it would sound more credible.
And he got his sources, so
exactly. So
all right, let me ask you this. No. Let's clear this up right away, brother. Let's not just skip. Where did you get your information from that it was the family court was about molestation? Because technically speaking, because I was a social worker for many years, you can't have molestation cases in family court. It's always about if the parent is fit. That's what family court does. You know what I'm saying? Family court doesn't do.
No, I understand exactly.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second, bro. Because I love you tonight. I love how you're handling yourself. I love your honesty. You know what I'm saying? Because I think you are doing with integrity. So we need to find the root of this conversation so that we could find out where this originated from. So we could tell the people, hey, you know what? this doesn't make, family court doesn't deal with molestation. To be honest, it can deal with the allegation in as far as the courtroom saying, hey, this guy was accused of this, and this is why we're bringing you to court. But they don't deal with molestation in the court or family court. They don't do that. They don't do that. You could do your own investigation in that, but I'm telling you that they don't do that. But let me let you finish your point, Brother Issa. Go ahead, my brother. Give you.
I'm going to respond to that. All right.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, they would be in family court, right? Dealing with the type of situation of whether or not their parents were suitable to have them. What's the issue? Why would they be there in the first place? You see what I'm saying? It's true what you're saying in a criminal setting, right? Family court wouldn't deal with that. That'd be the case with the superior court. But what would be the issue for the children to be in family court in the first place? It would have to be some type of allegation to
let me give you an example. Okay. I went to family court because I had hit my son one time, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when I hit him, the judge said to me, you cannot hit your son, right? There's not an allegation in the court for me for hitting him. They're just telling me, advising me. They couldn't press charges or anything. They're just telling me that I cannot do that because we were arguing about visitation. Mm-hmm. And was I fit to have him at my house after I hit him or not? You understand? Mm-hmm. That's what the judge was making a decision on. Now, if they had said that I was guilty of hitting him and everything, they could have passed on the information to the district attorney and said, let's press charges against this guy for abusing his son. Family court doesn't do that. Family court is for child support and all this foolishness. You understand what I'm saying? It's not that, yes, the allegation is there that there was sexual abuse or molestation by Dr. York. And if these parents allowed it to happen, are they fit to supervise these children if they allowed it to happen while the children were in their custody? That's why they were in family court. From the information that you said. You understand what I'm saying? And, from the information that you said, that's what I get from it. I'm not talking about what Brother Anpu said. So from the information that you said earlier, I could tell that they're basing it on the fact that these kids were abused. So when you're an abused kid, you can't just go right directly back to the household that you used to live in because they're saying that the parents allowed it to happen. So it became a family court issue. Because every one of those kids in the court, they had a lawyer. Whether Brother Anpu knows or not, they had a lawyer for them. And those lawyers and those representatives for those 5 kids had to go around and do their own investigation. And that's why they released them back to them. Because the brother, as he said, had to get a job. He had to get a job and show and prove to the court that I have a job and I work and I can take care of my children. So you don't have to worry about any other funny stuff happening because I'm a responsible father or a responsible parent. So that's what family court does to you. They don't deal with molestation, whether the molestation happened. They're trying to prevent it from ever happening again because it was a supervisory issue to them. It was a parenting issue to them. They had nothing to do with Dr. York. They're saying that the parenting issue allowed this to happen. So we want to know if these parents are fit to get these children back so they won't be abused again. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the situation with that case. But go ahead, Brother Issa. Let me let you finish your point.
Well, I'll read right from the Georgia Code 19-7-5, reporting of child abuse when mandated or authorized content of report to whom made immunity from liability, report based upon privileged communication, penalty for failure to report. There's a whole section on what it deals with for the abuse. Now, from what I said, from what Anpu said, right? Do we all agree that there was an accusation that these children were abused?
Abused. Yes, sir.
Wait. Let me make the distinction because this is why it's very important to be very specific and very detailed in what people are listening to or go by. Because the brother Issa, you said that the family court, it was a judicial ruling that they were found not to be molested and that it could have been used in the state case, and this is why Dr. York had ineffective assistance of counsel and so on and so forth. You see how that train of thought flows from one to the other, and you're incorrect. There was no judicial finding of no molestation in the family court. It was the family court's ruling was that these parents were fit to take custody back of their children. And the reason why is because these parents lived on the property where these accusations were listed to have taken place. So the parents had to show that they did not live on the land and that they had a fully functioning household and could take care of the children and so on and so forth. So that was the ruling. The ruling had nothing to do with child molestation. So no attorney could have taken that court ruling and into a state case as a fact, as a judicial fact, as you just earlier said, and you were incorrect. So that's what I'm making a distinction and correcting. So yes, the children were there in the very first place because they were listed as victims in Dr. York's case, and they were taken by defects off the land and questioned and so on and so forth. So that's why they were there in the first place. But the judicial ruling and things like that, it had nothing to do with anything that a lawyer can take into state court or federal court or whatever. So that's wrong.
Yeah, I want to move on from that point. Because the audience, I don't want to go back and forth on that too long. I mean, it's obvious what was going on there. We asked about how many victims there were. We all agree that it was 13 victims. All right.
There was more than
the next question here. All right. How many were there?
There were 18. There were 18 listed. 13 people. It said 13 because of the sharing of some of them with the state. There's some state listed victims that are not in the federal, and vice versa. But then there's some that are in both the state and the federal. So between the two, it was always said 13, but there's actually overall there's more. So go ahead. And I want to say this. Any names that I mentioned, if you give me a minute, I just want to say this for your listeners or for any Nuwaubians who are listening. One of the things about me is that there's an assumption that I'm slandering, or that I speak and I'm slandering Dr. York, or I am against something or whatever, and that's not the case at all. And this is the pretense of like when you said, how does the brother Issa know versus how do I know? And yes, it'll sound more credible. It'll sound that way with me. I have no reason to fabricate or lie about anything that I'm saying whatsoever. There's an assumption among the community that I am bitter, and because of my bitterness, I'm against Dr. York and this and that. I'm hating, and everything I say is I'm hating and stuff like that. That is far from the truth. Nobody knows why I left because I never made an announcement. So anything that people think why I left, they're making it up. And I don't want to get into that. I mean, we can, but I don't have to get into that. But so I just want to put that out there that my job, even when I was in the Nuwaubian, was to inform everyone of the facts, because I knew the facts, and I would share the facts, share the documentation, share the facts. And that's what I still do. Even when I left, after I left, I was still helping the administration. I was still meeting with them. I wasn't a member, or I had left, but I was still helping. I was still helping the key players that was working on behalf of Dr. York. Still giving them documentation, still giving advice, or they come to me, ask questions. I gladly answer the questions, and so on and so forth. So I just want to put that out there, because for anybody listening, and the brother Issa right now, because there's a we don't know each other, but online, he's expressed, whatever, he thinks he knows why I say what I say, or whatever. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up for anybody listening who do know me, or don't know me, or heard about whatever through the grapevine. I don't operate that way. I'm approachable. People can ask me questions. I still answer questions about the case. So yeah, I just want to get that out there. I appreciate you giving me time to say that.
Okay, let's move on to this question real quickly so we could stay on track. Have any of you guys ever talked to any of the victims involved in the case?
Oh, you want to answer that first?
No, I haven't
Issa,
talked.
go ahead,
There was one forum where the people who were saying they were victims were communicating, and me and a couple other people started communicating on that forum, which was a Facebook group, and the situation got into I'm gonna call FBI on you, and that was the end of it. And it was one of the people involved in the case. So no.
Okay. Well, as far as me, yeah, I like I said at first, I dealt with them all. All the ones on the defense, and I knew all of them, or know all of them. But I directly dealt with the ones who the defense called on the witness stand. I dealt with all the defense witnesses, all forgot the exact number now, but 50 plus witnesses. So for
the
me,
defense, and what about the prosecution witnesses? Were any of you guys familiar with any of them?
Say that again.
The prosecution witnesses, were you guys familiar with any of them? The prosecution witnesses.
The prosecution witnesses are going to be the alleged victims.
Exactly.
Well, there were listed victims that testified for the defense, and there were listed victims that testified for the prosecution. So there was listed victims for both, took a stand for both sides.
Oh, okay.
So my answer is yes. I knew them all, and I dealt with them.
I want to ask you.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead, brother. Ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to. There's a couple of things. Hopefully, we'll get back to it. But I just want to. He said something, right? And I want to question that. Serious. I want to question this. He says that he's not against Dr. York. That anything he says is just he's giving people information, which it would appear he's saying in the same capacity, though not a non-official capacity, as before. I kind of find that disingenuous for the simple reason that let me put it to you like this: if me and you, Garfield, we all right with each other, right? And I got somebody next to me who hates your guts, that all they do is talk, bad about Garfield day in and day out, and I'm hanging with them all, and when I say hanging, I'm associating myself with these people, right? And whenever it's something, that's positive for Garfield, and like somebody might say something, Garfield's defense, like, Garfield's all right, and Garfield, Garfield, when somebody's speaking positive of you, right? I'm the first one that I'm supposed to be cool with you, but I won't really point out like, no, that's not right and exact. But I wouldn't even associate myself that group, because if me and you is all right, well, I'm not against you. Why am I with these people who's against you, who's slandering you, who's doing these type of things? It seems disingenuous. And then at times I'm not going to even speak up on your behalf. But when somebody else speaks up in your behalf, that's when I have something to say. I kind of find that very disingenuous that he's saying that's not the case. Appearance is everything, and it appears that is the case. But nevertheless, in him saying that, my question to him is this. As he says, he had information pre-trial, during trial, even post-trial, he did interviews speaking in defense of Dr. York. During that whole time period, he was saying Dr. York is innocent. He was explaining that there was prejudice against Dr. York. He didn't get a fair trial. That from beginning to end, there was problems with the case against Dr. York. You could see him on Voice of the Crusader. I posted this stuff. This is him talking, right? And now it doesn't add up what he's saying from what I've seen in the chat rooms, what he's typed. Even though he is informative on certain aspects, but it appears that when he'll state a fact, along with that fact, he'll give interpretation of that fact that no one else is privy to. but him, because he says, well, I was there. You see, you don't know this stuff. And my thing is, if he's saying right now that he's not against Dr. York, that his position hasn't changed, then what really is the issue?
Let me respond to that. One, that, you know, everything that I said on the videos and things that you have posted is my labor and my time and my sacrifice in assisting and helping to free, you know, Dr. York, which is, you know, the Nuwaubian's master teacher. And I'm assuming you're, you know, if you're still a Nuwaubian, you're a master teacher, and so on and so forth. So I put in the work to defend him. And I can even go to say that I've defended him in some instances harder than he defended himself. Okay? And the not fair trial, you know, we can get specific. If you want to ask me specific questions about what I specifically said, then we can deal with that, and that would be a lot better than to you know, paint it with a broad stroke. But as far as online, like I said, one of my jobs while I was still a member was to inform the Nuwaubian community about the facts of the case. And there's a brother who used to be a Nuwaubian who started a Facebook group called USA versus York. And he started that group because in his eyes, a lot of people were still confused about the case and so on and so forth. So he asked me to join the group to because of my knowledge of the case, to answer people's questions when they come up. So that's one of the groups that you may be referring to. And then there's another group where people were challenging the Nuwaubian doctrine. And the two groups were separate. One group dealt with the doctrine, one group dealt with Dr. York's legal cases. Then those groups became kind of mixed and merged because people were bringing up different issues, cross-pollinating the two different groups. So in those groups, I would still state facts. I would state the facts. And what happens is, because you said appearances are everything, what happens is people such as yourself will say something incorrect, just like you did on this conversation when you said that the family court had a ruling about no molestation occurring. So when I come and correct people like you, it appears that I'm hating because it's not as hype or favorable the way you said it. Because check it out, if people are listening to you, and if I wasn't on this phone, people would have walked away and said, "Wow, so you mean to tell me that Dr. had a family court case and the judge ruled that it was no molestation and the lawyers didn't even take it into the state and federal?" People will walk away with that and be hyped and excited about that. And this is the problem that goes on in the Nuwaubian community, where people are going off of gossip and false information, and then it hurts Dr. York in the long run. So this was my frustration even while I was a Nuwaubian, where people would get hyped and happy and gung-ho about things that are just wrong. So my entire time I've been correcting people, because people who don't know better, who are ignorant of different things, have the biggest mouth and say things and repeat things that are just not true. So here I come. If I come corrected, yes, I seem like the bearer of bad news when I do that. And I do that anyway because I understand it. So my point is to correct the misinformation, because the way I operate now.
Brother Anpu,
yeah.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let me cut you off and say this. At the Million Man March, Farrakhan had a 8-step to atonement, and it was an 8-step program. And the first step was the person pointing out the wrongs that somebody is doing, and that person is always hated. So whenever somebody comes to reveal truth, or even Dr. York's been through it, because remember, he's the one that pushed, we're removing the spells, where Christianity was fooling us, and he came to remove that spell. So everybody hated Dr. York. Everybody hated his dad. Everybody hated him.
Exactly.
360 questions to ask a Christian. So don't feel bad that you're revealing truth, brother. You know, but I don't want Brother Issa to feel that. I don't want Brother Issa to feel like we're saying that he's wrong and putting out information. That's why I said to him, we need to get to the source of all of this so we can correct it. So even if we're defending New York, we have the right and proper information, and don't just put out information for the sake that we like to do. You know, I like Dr. York, so I'm going to say anything that I want. And I don't think Issa is that type of dude anyway, but he probably fell into that trap because that sounded real good. And it did sound good, that in family court. But as a social worker, as an ex-social worker, I got to put two and two together too, you know, with family court, because I've been in family court all the time. So I know what it is. You know, but I don't want to stay too long on this though. Let's move on because we have to be done.
Well, let me just finish my point really. Okay, just real quick. Let me just finish my point. My whole thing though, because I'm going to address it because I have to make this clear because people are listening. Some people know me, and a lot of people who don't know me hate me for no reason. You know, it's like imaginary beef, imaginary hate and stuff. So I want to get this point out there that no, it appears like I'm the bearer of bad news because people are pushing misinformation. And my philosophy while I was a Nuwabi and even now is that you defend Dr. York armed with the truth, armed with the facts. It is the truth that will make a difference. It is knowing the fact and then applying whatever you have to apply, strategizing and making power moves that's going to help Dr. York, not hype and not a bunch of sensationalism. So that's what I make sure that Nuwabians understand.
All right, let's go to the chase real quick here. Quick question. Brother Issa, you there, right, my brother? You there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right. Is it possible any of the victims, the so-called victims, were telling the truth? Is it possible?
Is it possible that any of the victims were telling the truth? You'd have to get more specific.
Yes, sir.
And here's the reason why.
Do you? All right. Let me get specific. Yeah. Go ahead, my brother.
No, here's the reason why. If you see the prosecution's theory of this case, right? Their theory, government, the prosecution, they're painting a picture that the only reason why he got that land in Georgia, right, was for the sole purpose of his sexual gratification. In other words, it was it was all a ploy for him to get a Never Land ranch to bring children in so he could abuse them. That's the government's theory.
All right, let me ask you a question. So you got that information that you just told us. You got that information from what, the transcripts or from who you got that
you get that you get straight from the transcripts. That's what the government's theory of the case is.
All right. So let me ask you this. Go ahead.
We might as well go point for point. If anyone gets the oral arguments for the federal appeal or get the any of the pretrial transcripts, what Issa just said is not true. The government actually said that there's some good values in the Nuwabian thing. It's not against the whole organization, and that they hope that people will still be members and so on and so forth. Now, me saying it sounds like I'm taking up for the government. It sounds like I'm sugarcoating it or whatever. And this is what I mean by where people look at me and be like, well, hey, man, you must just be against it or whatever. And it's only because of what is said, like what Issa said. He'll say something wrong.
And stop right there, right? You just made a distinction between Dr. York and Nuwapians. We weren't talking about Nuwapians. We were talking about Dr. York getting the land. We weren't talking about Nuwapians. And if you look at the Mann Act, which is the reason why the federal government declared their jurisdiction in the case, which you agreed with me earlier. The Mann Act was about crossing state lines or causing people to be transported across state lines for the purpose of sex, illicit sex. That's the Mann Act.
Yeah, Florida
York lived in New York.
From New York to Atlanta. Yeah, New York.
He lived in New York
when he went to Disney World.
Exactly. He lived in New York. From New York, he went down to Georgia, right? One of the key witnesses in the case is Habiba Washington, right? They gave her immunity, and then they asked her questions, and this was part of a travel of events, a travel of the case, in regards to Dr. York. asking her at what age did she first have relationship with him, asking her all these different things, and they got in that in the testimony in the transcripts, right? So to say that that's not the government's theory, when you read the transcripts, that's not the government's theory in regards to Dr. York, not Nuwapians, but Dr. York, right? That's what the government exactly was trying to say, that this was all one big thing for him to have access to children, which is, I was in New York, and there's probably a couple hundred people on the line who was in that community in New York who won't tell you, who would tell you that there was no molestation going on in New York. See what I'm saying? So, in the government's theory, they're saying that this was a ploy to get people to go down south so he could do whatever he wanted to do. That's what the government's saying. For him to tell me or to tell you that no, because the government said that the Nuwapians is good in it. No, we ain't talking about Nuwapians. We ain't talking about doctrine. We talking about Dr. York.
Okay, let me finish what I was saying. What the government said, the government charged Dr. York with the Mann Act, which is transportation and travel, and it's the destination location where it has to be, where whatever is being alleged has to be illegal. So what I was saying was that the government said, and this is in the transcripts as well, that Dr. York has set up a good organization and so on and so forth. So I was just saying that to say that out of their mouth, that Dr. York put in place some good things, some good values, a good organization, and so on and so forth, and that as far as what the charges were, was that they are charging him for the purpose of the intent. They're saying that he intended to transport or cause to travel these people across state lines for illegal sexual activity. So that's embedded within the code and the charges. What I was addressing was what you said, was that they're painting a picture that this whole thing was all set up for that sole purpose. And that's not what they said, though.
They said they charged him with causing children to be transported from New York to Georgia. Is that correct?
And from Georgia to Florida.
Florida. But is that correct? Okay. So when you read the way the prosecution's going at it, you're telling me it doesn't read that that's the reason why he wanted them down there, when that's the charge itself, the Mann Act. There's two parts to the Mann Act.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's very clear. I mean, it's in the federal indictment itself. Anybody can read the indictment of what Dr. York is being charged with. So you have the indictment. So you and I both are aware. I'm not arguing against what the indictment is saying. So I don't understand your question at this point. Yes, he was charged with the Mann Act. And the Mann Act.
Let's move on from this. Because we're not getting anywhere. There's a lot of confusion about recanting, who recanted, and all that stuff. Now, we have allegedly 18 victims for the state and the federal cases. And we have people going around saying that people recanted what they're saying. I think Habiba Washington was the only one that I know, I think, had recanted, and then she recanted after that recantation. I don't know if I'm correct, but you guys could correct me. Let me ask Brother Issa this. Did anyone who testified on Dr. York's behalf for the defense, did any of those people recant their statements afterwards?
And I'm going to answer you the same way Anpu's going to answer you. A recantment is something that's done in court with a judge under oath. She did recant on tape, on video. I'm talking about Habiba. She recanted her earlier testimony. When they brought her to the court and they questioned her about it, she didn't go along with her recantment. She was under oath. The reason being, she would have lost her immunity and been charged with perjury because she already testified under oath. Now, That's
All
the
right,
legal,
all right, hold on.
the legal definition of encampment.
Stop right there. All right, stop right there. Let me get Anpu. We gotta do this fast. We gotta start doing this fast because time is going. We got like 30 minutes left. Anpu, respond to that. You got 30 seconds.
No, there are no recampments in the case at all. Habiba's recampment, what they're calling a recampment, was an attempted recampment, but there's no recampments in the case at all.
Okay.
There's no legal recampment
in the case, but no legal recampment. But they did recant outside of the court surroundings or under the court rule. So it wasn't a recantment. It was like they said something else in public afterwards, after the fact. Am I correct by saying that?
That's true. That's true.
So there was no recantment in the cases at all. So we need to remove that word out of our vocabularies because it wasn't legally done. So we can't call it a recantment. All right. Let me see what else. Okay. You know what? Lisa, you have a question for? Go ahead.
Now I just want to say something real quick though. That's a very important point though about the recampments because I constantly see Nuwaubians say that there are a lot of recampments. You know, this almost rolls off the tongues as though it's just factual information. So this is another example of where misinformation will get passed on as though it's all wise, right, and exact, and it's not. And I say this because this type of stuff doesn't help Dr. York. It actually hurts him. And throughout my involvement in the case, I've seen this happen, and I would tell people all the time that hurts him. People love Dr. York. They love him to death, but they don't realize that by doing stuff like that, they're hurting him because it causes people to focus on the wrong things. So I just want to put that out there that people have to really, really get the facts of the case, arm themselves with that, and then try to help. That's what's going to help him. Not going off the hype and the gossip and just running around repeating it. You know, so that's always been what I've been saying, and I keep saying it right now. Even though I'm not a member, I still give the same advice.
Some of the testimony that I've read is I don't know if it's true or not, but David Noel. Are you familiar with David Noel, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. He basically said, they asked him a question, what sex acts did you see Mr. York perform on Issa Johnson? David Noel, I've seen Issa perform oral sex on York. I've seen York attempt anal sex on Issa. I've seen Issa attempt anal sex on York. Where was the first time you saw this? In his house, on the downstairs bedroom. Was anyone else present? It was Nija or Markula, which is Khadija Merritt. You mentioned Issa Johnson. Who is he? This is Nico Lopez. This is fine. He's Kathy Johnson's oldest son. Nico Lopez, Doc, who is Malachi York, he sat me down and started taking off my panties and motioned to me to start giving him oral sex. And that led to vaginal sex, and Issa Johnson was there watching us. How old was Issa at the time? Nico Lopez, I'm not sure, 9, 10, or 11 years old. Did the defendant ever say anything to you as why he would have sex with different people in groups or with boys? At times, he would talk about younger boys. He'd comment to us about how if you start with them when they're younger, it helps them develop. Now, I could read a bunch of different testimonies, and the whole thing that I'm seeing is that this guy, if he's not guilty, are we saying that the government coach all these witnesses to say these things? Is that what we're saying? Are we allowing the victims to be ignored because of the charisma of this man who's a leader for the Nuwaubians? Are we overlooking something here with this man? So we're saying that all these folks were government agents, and they trained them to say these things in court to get Dr. York, because he's some charismatic leader that is affecting the injustices in America and change in America so much that we need to stop him. Is that what we're saying, Issa?
Well, let's look at what you just read. He said that he saw Issa Johnson abused, right? Issa Johnson was called to court, and Issa Johnson said it didn't happen. When you look at you have to go to the credibility of each individual person and what's surrounding these people. A lot of these people, families were threatened. We made mention.
Hold on. Families were. Yeah. You said families were threatened. Families were threatened by who?
The government.
So they were threatened. What proof do you have any proof of that?
There's some of the people right on. I have it right now. I'm looking at it on YouTube out their own mouth,
saying that the government called them and threatened them.
Yeah.
Okay.
People were threatened. Right. What I'm saying to you is this: the people who saying that they were molested by Dr. York, right? It's not true. That's what I'm saying. It's not true. If you're saying why isn't it true? Surrounding circumstances that was going on at that time, and you have people with vested interests to lie, such as Habiba, Nicole, and a few other people. There's one thing we're leaving out. When you start talking about this whole case, there's some things we're leaving out altogether. Is the trip to Florida, the trip that Yaqub went on with a lot of these people in Florida, the party trip or whatever they call it. At that, and this is what Habiba talked about on her recording during this trip. This is what came about, a plan of sorts to make allegations. So we take this, that it's not just Habiba saying that there was a lot of different people co-signing the same trip and the same story that came to fruition about molestation. You take that trip right there and what was discussed back to the land, and you take these people who at one point said they were never molested, right? And then all of a sudden there's people saying that they were. This is a storyline that was circulated, and there was coercion performed on a part of the government against certain people, families, to intimidate in order to get Dr. York for molestation.
All right, go ahead, Brother Anpu. Thank you, Issa.
Well, based on what the brother said, then, you have to rely on what a person says. And how do you vet the truthfulness of what a person says? You can't, you have to use other means to vet the truthfulness of what someone says. For instance, the Wahabians Wahabians use Habiba's video as a means to push the fact that she recanted and that it was all a lie and everything like that. But at trial she said something different, and then at the new trial hearing where she was called in to support her affidavit, she didn't support it. She said that what she said at the trial was correct. So if we're going to talk about the credibility of someone, when someone testifies one way, makes a video a different way, and then testifies again back to the original one, then you can no longer use that person for either left or right, good or bad, as a credibility issue or integrity issue. So when people do that, that's a fault. You can't, it doesn't make sense to do that. So how do you verify the credibility? So, during a trial, the lawyers from both sides get a chance to direct exam, cross-exam, redirect, and re-cross-exam witnesses for this purpose, to find out the truthfulness of their statements. Because even though people are under oath, people still lie and whatnot. So I'm saying that to say that, his explanation is relying on, something that is vetted in the court system, through questions and things like that. So there's a lot that was said. There's a lot that was said in court that people, unless you were there or you have the trial transcripts, that you won't know what was said to vet it. The brother mentioned that there's a lot of people that corroborate the South Beach trip with Jacob or Yakub York. There's not a lot of people. There was only 3 people ready to testify. Only one was allowed to testify to speak about the South Beach trip. Jacob York himself was not called in by the prosecution or the defense. So that information was never, the jury never got wind of any of that information. So these are the things that are passed on, in the community, but they had no bearing on the case. So, and then you have people, when the brother mentioned coercion, there are people. What Nuwaubians need to know is that the alleged victims or the listed victims in the case who testified on Dr. York's behalf, in his favor, they are much older now and so on and so forth. They are saying the direct opposite now. So Nuwaubians are going to have to explain what is the motive for that. Why the change now when they have already moved on with their lives? For example, there's 2 sisters, twins, that have, on to college, graduate with honors and this and that. What would be the motive to say anything else? Because if the motive was one way, then they have to explain the motive switching the other way. And I'm only saying this, I'm saying this as advice on what Nuwaubians should do when they make these statements. They have to cover all bases, and they're not doing that, and it's not looking good. So I'll leave it at that without being long. I know you press for time. I won't be too long-winded. Like I said, I could talk for days about different specifics, but in general, there's a lot that has to be discussed and sorted out because there's just a lot of misinformation surrounding the case.
All right.
And, I gave an example. Oh, go ahead.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Based on all the information that you have, do you think that the jury, by the way, how was the jury in the federal case? Was it mixed? Was it black folks? Was it white folks? What was it, a mixed jury? What type of jury was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, as far as racial makeup or ethnicity, it wasn't balanced. It was more, white people than black, for sure. So, the jury of your own peers, people who speak about that, then it wasn't Dr. York's peers. The majority of the jury was not in his image and likeness. So no.
Oh, okay. All right. So the racial makeup wasn't the best thing, but do you believe that the defense did a good job as far as the federal case is concerned?
Yes. I think Adrian Patrick did an excellent job under the circumstances and in the context of what he was dealt with. The brother mentioned earlier ineffective assistance of counsel of Dr. York's previous lawyers. And what people should need to know, is that Dr. York had lawyers, the Garland, Samuel, and Loeb firm, including Manuel Rohrer and Edward Garland, and they had pretty popular attorneys in Georgia. But what happened is Adrian Patrick was the trial attorney. He ended up being the trial attorney, but he was originally brought on to handle the state case. He was asked to switch over into the federal case to actually be an assistant, to just assist, because Garland's team was still there. Dr. York didn't fire or terminate Garland's services until the very, very last minute, which forced Adrian Patrick to become lead attorney at the last minute. So this goes back to the brother's question or statement about me saying that Dr. York didn't get a fair trial. In the video, when I said that Dr. York didn't get a fair trial, the basis for me saying that, one of the main bases for me saying that, was that the lawyer, Adrian Patrick, wasn't allotted the time as lead attorney enough time to properly prepare for the trial as much time as Edward Garland and his team did. So based on that, the trial was not fair. Adrian didn't have a fair amount of preparation. And I still say that, back then, I still say that to this very day. Adrian Patrick will tell you the same thing today. So, but you know, to answer your question in short, yes, I think the trial was. I think that definitely under circumstance, it was a RICO case, and RICO cases are confusing to even lawyers. So the jury, I'm sure the jury was confused about a lot of stuff as far as the law is concerned. But as far as what the defense did, what Adrian Patrick did, I think he did an excellent job, especially under circumstances, to memorize all the names, to call and ask questions. Basically, the whole team. Adrian Patrick wasn't by himself. He was the legal representation by himself. Him and Cedric Davis and Manny Aurora was actually still in on the case in the beginning, on the trial, during the trial in the beginning. But Adrian Patrick had the support of us as members of the unofficial or unlawyered legal team. We were assisting Adrian, and we performed some miracles while all that was transpiring. I mean, people wouldn't believe the things that we were doing behind the scenes to make it as an effort.
Garfield, I'm still on.
Go ahead. By the way, anybody in the call queue want to ask a question, man, they could press 1 and ask a question to the brothers. All right, go ahead, Isa.
When he mentions about, I believe it's Manny Aurora, the judge refused to fire Manny Aurora off the case. He refused to take him off the case. And when we're talking about ineffective, up until Adrian Patrick came on that case, right? And even a little bit after, because Adrian Patrick, post-trial, wasn't on the case the whole time. But up until he came on that case, I was speaking about those lawyers who was on that case before Adrian Patrick, which would be Manny Aurora, which would be, what's the other lawyer from that firm? I think Rubino. But their actions going forth with the case, I'm talking about them. They were ineffective. And
they were only ineffective because they didn't have a favorable outcome. But when you charge a lawyer with ineffective assistance of counsel, you have to actually cite. Yeah, you have to cite and Washington is the standard. Say it again.
Strickland versus Washington is the standard of ineffective assistance of counsel. What did the lawyer do? What did the lawyer do?
Exactly. So when you say like Frank Rubino or Garland or Manny Aurora, and you're talking about everybody prior to Adrian Patrick with ineffective assistant counsel, to make that's a broad statement. I'm saying when you make that statement, you got to be specific on what were they ineffective, because usually people say that because the lawyer didn't have an outcome that you want or you expect. So ineffective, because the reason why I say that is because if Garland's law firm was so ineffective, why didn't Dr. York fire them? Why did he fire him all the way up to the last minute?
You're asking me the question?
Yeah.
According to Dr. York, he was trying to fire them.
Okay, how do you try to fire lawyers when all you have to do is terminate their services?
No, that wasn't that. I agree. If I have a lawyer, if I don't want him, I'm going to fire him. Whether I got to go in court to get rid of him or I have to write a letter, I would do that. But it appears from looking at what happened in his case.
Isa, hold on a second. You see, this is a situation that's not going to be resolved, because you're going to say that Dr. York said he tried to fire them, and you don't know if it's true. You're going off Dr. York's word. So now, if Brother Anpu now is saying that if you're going to fire somebody, a lawyer, all you got to do is get up in court and say, Your Honor, I don't want these gentlemen to be my lawyer anymore. So if you can provide for me where Dr. York tried to fire them, you see, this is the problem with the whole case of them. Everything is based off of what Dr. York says. And we don't know if it's true or not, but because he's your leader, you tend to believe him immediately, because he said so.
No, sorry.
So it puts us at a disadvantage, brother, because we don't know if something is true or not based on what Dr. York said. But between me and you, Issa, if you have a lawyer right now, Issa, hold on. I'm your lawyer. I'm representing you in a criminal court, right?
Yeah.
How am I? Oh snap! How am I gonna? If you choose to fire me, or don't want to use me anymore as a firm?
Can I make this real short?
Tell me that.
Can I make this real short?
I don't need you anymore. Go ahead.
I know your personal time. I just want to make this real short because I asked you the question. It was a rhetorical question because when you fire a lawyer, it's very simple. All you have to do is write a letter. All you have to do, you can even have a proxy. You can have a proxy to draft up a letter, and you can get it signed. You can go in visitation, have it signed, whatever, and things like that. It's very simple. Look at how Habiba Washington fired her attorney prior to her coming into court about her recantment affidavit. She fired her lawyer with a simple letter, and the lawyer was gone, done. It's easy. The reason why I asked that is because the gossip is that okay. He tried to fire the lawyers, and it didn't happen, and so on and so forth until the last minute. And I'm only asking, without trying to sound like, okay, well, hey, it's a different story or negative. I'm just trying to let Issa and other people use common sense. If they were if they were seen as such ineffective assistants of counsel, why were they kept on until the very last minute? When I say very last minute, I'm talking about a week before the trial. A week. They were on from 2002 all the way to the end of 2003, going into January of 2004. So if they were so ineffective, why were they on so long? And this is what people have to think about. Because if you think your lawyer is out to is because not only did Dr. York say not only is it said that they're ineffective, they said they were working for the other side. They're working against him. If you think that some lawyers are working against you or working for the prosecution, you best believe you're going to get rid of them. So I'm just putting it out there because people need to start using their common sense. And most people do. So this is why when Nuwaubians say certain things like this, it becomes unbelievable, and people don't want to help. So this is my cry always. Deal with the facts. Deal with the things that mean something, that have value, not this peripheral stuff. Like the MLK thing. People went on about the Martin Luther King holiday court being open and so on and so forth. I'm like, that doesn't do anything. But a lot of money was invested in that, and flyers and attention was put on that. It did not help Dr. York. You know what I'm saying? So, and I've said this to Dr. York face to face when I was still a member, when similar things were going on. I would tell him in his face in visits and say, hey, they focus, that's the wrong stuff to focus on. We need to do this. We need to blah, blah, blah. So it's not like let's
move on. Let's move on from this because we're not going to agree. We're going to agree to disagree on this. I just think that the whole lawyer thing is a gimmick. I don't think there's any proof. I don't think Dr. York said it. As far as putting that misinformation out, I'd leave that alone. But let's move on to something else. Issa, do you have any questions for Brother Anpu?
Yeah, I have just one question. Comes to mind right now. Has he changed his position in regards to his innocence?
The reason I'm pausing is because I don't answer. That's one question I don't answer, and I'm forthcoming with that. I tell people from the get-go, don't ask me whether I think Dr. York is guilty or innocent or whether I think he did it or didn't do it. What I always do, and I still do and willing to do, is to give people the information so that they can make their own assessments about everything. And the reason why, one of the reasons why I do that is because I don't want anybody to take my word for it in favor or not in favor of, because then they're believing me. So people have their own minds. They're grown adults. They can look at information and discern it for themselves. So that's been my position.
All right, let me ask the question another way.
Let me ask the question another way.
Hold on a second. No, Issa, hold on a second. Let me ask you this. After the state case when he pled guilty, and we got like 7 minutes left. After the state case when he pled guilty, right? What did he say to you personally, Brother Anpu,
why he pled guilty, or did he at any time ever tell you he was abused?
Well, yeah, that's you would need more than 7 minutes, but to be real quick, the what led up to the plea. People have to understand what led up to the plea. Dr. York was in communication with all of us, leading up to the plea. One of the things that led up to the plea was that, this was the best option. He was explaining to us that this was his best option. He has to go through with it, and so on and so forth. And he was basically making sure that
deep. So he hold on. He said to you, this was his best option. He said that to you, Brother Anpu.
Yes.
Let's make that clear on the record. The case closed. He couldn't have been abused then. How can he come to you?
Well, wait.
Let's option. And then after, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
I mean, on the issue of the abuse, like I said, when you listen to the Album Patmos CDs and whatever, the reasons for the plea was given that Dr. York was tortured, and then when asked, well, how was he tortured? His comments about torture was sleeping on hard concrete floors and dealing with rats and roaches and overcrowding. And then he did mention
sleep deprivation.
Sleep deprivation as far as leading up to it. So these are things that were mentioned. I'm talking about leading up to the plea, the plea hearing itself. These are the things that were mentioned. So then it becomes an issue where people have to ask questions. It's like I asked the question about the lawyers. Why weren't they fired? Without sounding negative, I just asked the question. People could think for themselves. I have confidence in people's ability to think. So, one of the things Dr. York said of why he pleaded guilty was to save the women that he believed that was being treated like how he was being treated, and so on and so forth. Well, the fact is that the women were not in jail or prison at the time that he took the plea. So if people were to know that and then hear him make a statement like that, then immediately they would need to question. They would need to at least be inquisitive and find out, well, hold up, what's really going on. So these are the kind of things that really messes it up, messes up things in the case. So if I say these things, it sounds negative. You know what I'm saying? But this is what people are dealing with. So you asked me what he say and everything. The whole idea was people, for someone like him to take a plea on such charges is devastating. So the things that he was saying, not just to me, but to people, to other people that live on the land and everything, the sisters, the brothers, and so on and so forth. One of his things was, I mean, how do you go through with that and tell the people that are behind you 100%? What do you tell them? So you have to tell them things like, you have to explain it, and whatnot. So a lot of the conversations was dealing with explanations of what's going to happen, why this, and what's going to happen afterwards, and so on and so forth. So without getting into details or and all that, because I know you pressed for time, but that's kind of like how the conversations went. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask you right out. Let me ask you. Hold on. Let me ask you right out. Did he ever say to you that he was abused and forced into this?
No.
Plea
no, never.
Okay.
No, never.
All right. Next question. Wait.
Let me. Hold on. Okay, one second. I say no, not until after, not until the Isles of Patmos CDs. We were doing those interviews and stuff like that. So I have to correct myself. So I say no, not in real time while it was going on, but afterwards. Yes, I have to say yes. Afterwards, after the trial and everything.
Did he ever give instructions to block Nuwaubians from coming in to see him make a plea deal? Is that true?
Yeah, that's definitely true. He didn't. I mean, and that's understandable. You don't want anybody to come. What he called it is his crucifixion. He didn't want people to come in and be in the courtroom and witness his crucifixion, where he's there pleading to something and things like that. So and that's understood.
Is it true?
That's understood.
Let's do this quick. 10-second answers. Is it true that he said that he wrote and told people that he's levitating in jail and he is converting many people around him, so that's why they have to constantly move him? Is that true, Issa?
I don't know that to be true. I can't say yes or no either way. What I do know that people told me that he levitated in front of them when he was down here in Georgia and in New York.
Okay. Has he ever levitated in front of you, Brother Anpu?
No, never. As far as
heard that he levitated. Have you ever heard that he levitated at all in real life?
Yeah, I've heard that as well, but I've never seen it. But I've heard it, and then as far as him writing people and saying that's true that he wrote people, and you know I've seen several people's letters because a lot of people used to turn in their letters to the office and into me.
We got 1 minute. We got 1 minute left. Is it true? I know Brother Ank always talk about a Brother Bun. Is Brother Bun's daughters the Evans sisters? Is that his daughters? Or is that somebody else's daughters?
No, that's it.
All right, so the Evans. So were they in the federal case, or is this a separate incident?
No, they were in the federal case.
Wow. And that led to him leaving. Did that lead to Brother Bun leaving the organization at that time when he heard about it?
Oh no, I don't know. I don't want to speak on something I don't know. But I can say that Bun, we call him Bun. He was still teaching. He was still teaching the doctrine. He actually had a bookstore in downtown Atlanta. So the details, I can't speak on that.
All right. So you know what? Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Brother Anpu. I don't know if you guys are available next week. We need to continue this so we could get some of the more information. Now, Brother Issa, you were excellent tonight, brother. Really appreciate your honesty. And Brother Anpu, you are definitely on point. I just want to say I appreciate you two brothers for coming on, man. And it takes a lot of courage to come out and speak out on something that's affecting people's lives and everything. All right. So I just want to say everybody have a beautiful evening. And thank you very much for joining us. And we're going to talk about it some more, man. This is going to be a topic we're going to talk about next week if you guys both have the time. It was a very intellectual convo. So thank you. Peace.